Hi, everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome. It's April. How did it get to be April? My name is Wendy Sachs, and I'm a member of the board of Plant Powered Metro New York. We're welcoming you to our ongoing monthly series called, whatever it's called, Cooking with Chef Carole, presented by Plant Powered Metro New York. PPMNY, as we're known, empowers people to find better health and overcome chronic disease with a whole food, plant-based approach to nutrition. Together with a wide network of grassroots leaders, organizers, doctors, and educators, we raise awareness about the dramatic health benefits of whole food, plant-based eating. We offer a food as medicine approach. We offer education. We build supportive communities and empower people to make lifestyle adjustments and organize and lead projects that spark changes to food policy, practice, and culture. So a warm welcome again to everyone, including those people who are watching us on the replay. This past March, PPMNY celebrated its 3rd anniversary, and you can watch a replay of our 3rd anniversary presentation, which if you are new to this podcast or this show or new to plant-based eating, it's really a wonderful overview of so many of our programs, so I'm mentioning it again. And in May, we have 2 really exciting events coming up. We'll put the links in the chat. One is an in-person visit to Dr. Ron Weiss's Ethos Farm in Long Valley, New Jersey. We're going to take a field trip. There's a bus coming from New York, but if you're in New Jersey or other places, you can come to the farm on May 14th. And then we're doing one of our, backed by popular demand, public jump starts, also in May. I don't have the date for that quite yet, but you could mark it in your calendar, particularly for people who are new to plant-based eating or anyone who wants to transition to plant-based eating. It really, the jump starts are a phenomenal immersion and take place over about 4 weeks. And we offer you mentors and guidance and recipes and all the science behind why we do what we do. So please let us know where you're from in the chat. It's always good to know the spread of people participating. Also, please ask your questions in the chat. I usually catch them, and I'm usually able to interrupt Carole or to just chat with Carole and ask her and get the questions answered quickly. But if we don't have time, then we usually reserve about 10 minutes at the end for any and all questions. And if you're enjoying the presentation, please like us on Facebook or YouTube. And to everyone listening to the replays, welcome. So one thing I know about today, which is a class dedicated to Asian flavors, an Asian meal, is that more than likely Carole will be cooking with ginger. So a fun fact about ginger. Throughout history, ginger has been a prized digestive aid. Confucius wrote about it circa 500 BC. He wrote that he never, well, let's see, let me read this properly. Confucius wrote of never being without ginger when he ate. And during the Revolutionary War, ginger's stomach-soothing properties made it an important part of the diet for the American soldiers. Gingerbread people, cookies, have had their roots in the 16th century when England Queen Elizabeth I liked to present important visitors with gingerbread men decorated to look like themselves. And then in the science, many in vitro studies show anti-cancer effect of ginger rolls, and studies have also shown ginger to be an effective treatment for nausea, tummy aches, and other kinds of upsets and pain. So where does this come from? All from Dr. Furman's 100 Best Foods, which I highly recommend. It's a wonderful book that has all kinds of foods and recipes and fun facts about them. So take a look at this book. And Carole, finally to you, what's on the menu today?
Wendy, I'm just laughing here to myself. One, I think the jump starts with our next Sunday demo, May 22, I think. Pretty certain, so that's one thing. Second of all, we're both on the same book, but not on the same page. Okay, I too I love this book and I've talked about it so many times. It's more of a magazine than a book, but it's 100 Best Foods, and I'm sitting here on the Bok Choy page because why? We're having hot and sour soup with bok choy. And one thing that is about bok choy people don't realize is that it's a vegetable. In this book, I'm going to read it right out loud. It says the vegetable is so high in beta carotene, which is the body converts to vitamin A, that just 1 cup of cooked bok choy provides enough vitamin A to exceed the daily recommended intake. And it also improves heart health, bone health, cancer protection, immune health, and are among the potential benefits of eating bok choy regularly. So I have bok choy here for our soup for later on, and I am excited to make 2 different meals today. We're going to make hot and sour soup, and we're going to make a Thai Asian salad. The Thai Asian salad actually comes from a Food for Life class that I recently taught. So a few of you who were in that class might have seen me make it. But once in a while, you hit on a recipe and you love it so much. You either, 1, you have to eat it all yourself, and 2, you want to share it with the world. So this hot and sour soup is a recipe that I had from my old days that I really, when I was eating, and I used to actually crack an egg in it. So it's kind of like egg drop soup, but I revisited an old recipe of mine and I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out. We're not going to have sesame oil. We're not going to have the egg in it, but we're going to still make a really rich soup and make it full of shiitake mushrooms and vegetables, and it comes together rather fast. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to slow things down a little bit. Normally, I try to cram as much as possible into our demos because I want to show so much. But today, we're going to make 2 things, and I didn't do a ton of prep. You'll see here in front of me, a lot of things are just left whole, and I thought we would actually step through things together, okay? So that you can see how fast things can come together rather than just seeing me have things that are prepped already. Now, I always encourage you to have all your ingredients and your things prepped ahead and have things in place so that when you go to assemble, you're just assembling. So let's just start off. I'm going to get this hot and sour recipe close by. And I know for certain that we need a lot of ginger and we need a lot of garlic, okay? And this, how much garlic do we need? We need almost 4 to 5 cloves. So I've taken out 4 to 5 cloves. And again, we're going to go through every step here. And you're going to watch and see how it all comes together, okay? Now, when you're getting these papers out, I like having a little bowl for just kind of ends and things that I'm not going to use. And these kind of papers from the garlic usually will go into my bucket full of things that makes the broth or the stock, right? And I talk about making your own stock all the time. Now, of course, you don't have to make your own broth or stock, but it is something that I encourage you to do because why? Because the stuff that you get from the store sometimes can have high sodium, sometimes, and unless you buy the low sodium, and you don't really know what they've made it out of. I've bought a box stock before, broth, and I was like, this tastes like carrot juice. This is like, doesn't even have like depth of flavor. So I'm never quite sure like what brand to recommend. People tell me that Pacific is a good brand of stock, but I always make my very own. And today we have nice broth that I made, and we'll go over that as well. But right now I've gotten the burner on and I've gotten my garlics out. And if you're someone that doesn't like to chop, then just buy your garlic already chopped, okay? Everything that I'm doing today in front of you, you're watching me chop things, right? But you could buy minced garlic, so in a jar. Now, often that comes in oil, so you want to just be careful about that. And sometimes I think I don't know if Trader Joe's, they used to make little cubes of minced garlic in the freezer. And I'm not quite sure if that would be in oil or not. I don't really know. But you can see here that 4 to 5 cloves of garlic is going to render, I've said that you need like 1/2 tablespoon and a half. So often with garlic, sometimes it's small, sometimes it's large. So I've given you 2 measurements here basically, 4 to 5 cloves or a tablespoon and a half. Okay, so that way you kind of know that you actually need a lot of garlic. Now, what I like doing while the pan is getting hot, right, is I've got this all minced up. And some people ask me, do you use a garlic press? And a garlic press is pretty great to have because you just put the garlic in and you press it. But I always find that so much of the garlic gets stuck in there and I don't feel like you're using it all. So I'd rather you learn how to use a knife and learn how to just chop your own garlic. Now, here is the ginger that we're using. And you might notice that I've already peeled a lot of the skin off of it. Why? Because I put a lot of the ginger skin in the broth that I was making today. And it's not a normal thing that you would put ginger skin in the broth you're making, because usually when you make broth, you want to have onions, you want to have carrots and mushrooms, tomatoes. And those are pretty much like your basic broth things. And you want to keep that so it's neutral flavor. But we've talked a lot here, because you've watched me make soup many, many times. Sometimes you make a specific stock for a specific soup. So today I knew that we were going to use all the stock for this soup. So I went ahead today and peeled most of my ginger, okay? I peeled it in advance. And I use the skin. Now I'm taking a back of a spoon just to get some of the extra skin off that I did not get off. Okay, you can use a peeler, and then I'm just gonna put that on the side. And then we need to have, how much? We need to have, it says 1.5, it says 1 tablespoon. So at this point, I can cut this with a knife. But I also have a really nice microplane, and I'm just going to use that to get the ginger all grated really fine. And it's just a little bit faster to have the microplane. This microplane used to be my Parmesan cheese years ago, but now I actually use it pretty regularly. It has pretty big holes. Of course, some of the string does get caught in there, but it's pretty fast. There's also ginger graters that you can find in an Asian store that are ceramic. I tend to like this plain, and you want to just get all that out. And when you have that string, I just remove that string because it's clogging up the holes basically. So we need a tablespoon, and my pan is getting hot. Now in this recipe, when I used to make it a long, long time ago, right? A very long time ago, the first thing I put in the pan was some sesame oil, right? Because that's what you're familiar with when you're cooking with Asian things. You're used to the sesame oil, and it kind of took me a little bit of time, I have to admit, to get over not having that. So we can measure. I can just measure just for measuring's sake, okay? But I can tell just from looking that I have my 1 tablespoon here. Okay, just want you to see. So this garlic and this ginger is going to go right into the pan immediately. And there's nothing in the pan. There's no water. I know that pan is hot. I can actually feel it. And I'm going to put some water or some broth in there right away. Okay, it's sizzling, sizzling, sizzling. And let's just get a little bit of water. I'm not going to use my broth quite yet. And we're just going to put a tad of water in there. And you can see the steam, right? Almost a good time to get a facial. And you want to just get all the garlic in there. And I'm getting a spoon, and I'm just going to make sure that none of it is sticking to the pan. And if it starts to stick, just add a little bit of water. But you don't want to really drown it, because what you're trying to do is seal in all the juices into this garlic. It's kind of like cooking it. I'm at a medium-high heat here, and that is cooking, okay? If it gets stuck, you add a teeny bit more water, okay? Does that make sense? And I put the chili flakes in right this very minute. And when you don't get the chili flakes out of the cabinet, you go and you get them right away. I thought that I got them out of oh, they are hiding under the bok choy. Sorry to leave the screen here, but they are right here, super close by. And we need to have 1/4 of a teaspoon, and I'm just giving it a big pinch. I just know that that is 1/4 of a teaspoon. Wendy, were you going to ask me a question?
There are no questions at the moment.
I just heard your voice a minute ago, so I thought maybe you had something to ask me.
I think that was my cat meowing for dinner.
Okay, no problem. So we've got in this pot, just to recap, ginger, garlic, and chili flakes. 3 things. That's cooking away. We're done with our ginger here. I'm just going to move this spoon here. What goes next? So after we cook that for a very few minutes, then we're going to put in a large saucepan. We've done all that water, and we're going to saute. We've done that. We have to be careful so nothing burns. Add vegetable broth and raise heat. So I'm going to do that. So we need 4 to 6 cups. We need 6 cups of vegetable broth. This is a quart. It's very strong. And if I need to go over what is in broth and how to make it, I will, if someone really wants me to do that. But basically what I did today was in the freezer, I always have a bag full of stock things. And those are onion skins, garlic, sometimes tomato ends, mushrooms, and celery, and carrots. Okay, those are the things that are in the bag. Now, I told you earlier that I added some ginger skin. And I also, because we wanted this to be very strong in mushroom flavor, when I cleaned the shiitake mushrooms, here is a bowl already sliced. We have 6 ounces. We are going to have a lot of mushrooms. I took off all their stems, and the stems went into the broth, and they cooked. So that way I got a very strong, mushroomy flavored broth. Okay, so we're starting out with an aggressive flavor here before we even add all the other vegetables and the mushrooms, okay? So I'm bringing this to a boil now. That's my goal, is to get the temperature up. Now, I put in 1 quart, and we needed 6 cups. So that means I need another 2 cups. And what's really great about having these quart jars is that it actually has measuring here. So I'm just going to go to my sink. I didn't make enough broth. So we need 6 cups. So I'm literally bringing the water halfway up, and we're just going to add that. And that is our enough broth, okay? So just wanted you to know that these quart mason jars, this is a ball, wide mouth jar, has ounces and cups on the side. It's really awesome. It has 1 cup, and then it says 8 ounces. And then it goes up to 2 cups, 3 cups, 4 cups. So it's pretty great to have that extra help measuring. Now, the next thing we need to have ready while this comes to a boil, and of course, if you want something to come to a boil quickly, you want to put your lid on, okay? Having a lid on the pot is going to bring everything to a boil. So I bought 6 ounces of shiitake mushrooms, and shiitake mushrooms are something, all mushrooms are superfoods, and you want to I try to eat a cup of mushrooms a day if possible, because they're really, really good for your building your immune system. So I've already cut a bunch, but shiitake mushrooms you can buy already sliced. So again, you're someone that doesn't like to cut things. Now, I took a paper towel and I just wiped down any dirt. I don't rinse these off. You never want to rinse mushrooms. You want to just take a paper towel and you just want to wipe down any of the dirt. So I've already clean the mushrooms. And then while we're waiting for the soup to boil, I'm just going to slice these while I'm talking to you. Okay? And we're just making slices. And I have 6 ounces total. Okay? Now, if you don't, you can use several kinds of mushrooms in this. Now, because this is a hot and sour soup, of course, these are the classic ones to use, the shiitake. But if you only have the white button ones, or you have cremini, or you want to mix it up, or you want to add some dried chanterelles, or you want to add dried porcini to make it a much stronger mushroom flavor. But today we're only using the shiitake, okay? And I could do a whole demo just on mushrooms. I love them so much. And maybe that's an idea, Wendy. Maybe when I'm fishing around for ideas and I can't remember what I feel like, I sit there sometimes and think, what are we going to do? I should make a mental note of doing a demo one day on just all the kinds of mushrooms.
I think that's a great idea. I've heard an anecdote, Carole, that I think it's actually in Dr. Furman's book, that the Iceman that they discovered that was 5,300 years old was discovered carrying a pouch of dried mushrooms with him.
Oh, because they don't go anywhere without mushrooms, right? Kind of like you just said about the ginger kind of thing. Like you don't go anywhere without mushrooms because they are medicine, right? I mean, we talk a lot about food as medicine, all of us, in whole food, plant-based eating. But the fact is that when we were at the height of COVID and I read how good the mushrooms were superfood and how good they were for your immune system, I decided every day I had to have a cup. And sometimes, I didn't buy them fresh in the store. I literally just, at Trader Joe's, they have these packs where they have lots of mixed mushrooms in the freezer section. And I remember buying bags of those frozen mushrooms because I was afraid to not have mushrooms. Some people were afraid to have baker's yeast, and I was afraid not to have mushrooms. So we all were or some people were afraid not to have toilet paper, right? So now, I don't know. So this is all coming to a boil, okay? It's starting. I'm just listening to it. I can hear it, okay? And what's going to happen is all these mushrooms are going to go into the soup. And while we're waiting for it to come to a full boil, I'm just going to show you that we're also going to put a 8-ounce can of bamboo shoots, okay? And bamboo shoots are small. They look like that. And what do they taste like? If you haven't had them before, it's hard to describe. They're crunchy. They don't have a lot of flavor. I think they absorb flavor. And you almost always find them in your Chinese meal, right? They're very, very common. They're not common in our culture, but in Eastern cooking, in Asian cooking, they're very popular, and they're very, very rich in nutrients. And they are full of protein, carbohydrates, lots of minerals, and they also are low in calories. So they too, and high in fiber. So they too are like a really good thing to have. So what I did was I opened this can. They always come in their own water. So I drained this can. So this is starting to come to a boil. So I'm going to put all of these in, okay? And I'm just going to leave them just as they come cut. I don't have to cut them or anything, okay? These are sliced bamboo shoots, okay? And I'm putting them in. Sometimes I put too many in, but it's up to you, but there's no point in leaving a half a can for another day because you might as well just have them all in your soup. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to put all the mushrooms in, okay? Now this is still on high heat. I'm waiting for everything to come to a boil, okay? And this soup actually comes together fairly fast for a soup, okay? It looks delicious. I'm just going to show you. I mean, there's just mushrooms floating, but I'm just going to show you so you see that you might think there's a ton of mushrooms in there, but this is what it looks like, okay? There's a lot of mushrooms. I very much want that to come to a boil, and then I'm gonna lower it, okay? Because what we're gonna do to make the soup a little bit thick is we're gonna make a slurry. And what is a slurry? A slurry is made up of cornstarch and water. Okay, so I actually have a quarter cup of water left over here. Believe it or not, the spoon, I'm looking at the water thinking, oh, it's kind of dirty in there. But the great thing is I just ended up, remember I just measured my ginger, right? And instead of throwing a spoon into the sink, I actually threw it into the cup with water. And it just happens to be a quarter cup of water. And what's floating in there is the pieces of ginger that were stuck on the tablespoon. So of course I'm going to use that, because why waste that water that has ginger in it already? So I have measured out 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into, and I'm going to just get a teeny little whisk, and we're going to whisk this up. Now, when you make a cornstarch slurry, you always want to add it to something that is boiling and hot. You don't want to just add it to something that's cool, because you need to, this is going to thicken up the soup immediately. So I'm just making sure that the powder is all mixed in with the liquid, and that's our slurry, so that's ready to go. And let's just remove some of these other things away from our counter here for a moment. Now I'm listening. Remember, I always talk about how you need all your senses. You're watching, you're smelling, you're listening, you're tasting, right? Cooking is not just one thing. It's all of the senses, right? So this is definitely starting coming to boil, which I'm excited about. And we're going to assemble our last things for this soup. So we have our slurry. And then we also we're going to have chopped green onions. And I did those in advance for one of our salads. For our soup and for our salad, we need chopped onions. Now, because we have a moment, I'm going to just show you, we're using these kinds of onions. It's more of a garnish, but it's also there for a flavor, because you have to remember, this is a soup. Most soups have onions, right? And we haven't put any onions in this soup. Okay, and I see that this particular scallion is still dirty. So I'm gonna give it a rinse, right? And I'm going to give this a rinse. And anything extra that I peel off is gonna go onto this plate that I have for our stock for another day. It's gonna go into the freezer, right? And then I'm just gonna peel any of this extra off. And I'm just gonna chop this, because we might as well just chop this. We'll have the other onion for the other salad. We'll just do that. And this is starting to I hear it more than I see it. It's like coming to a rolling boil, but it hasn't yet. Okay, so I'm just gonna chop these. These are gonna go into the soup for flavor. So don't consider them as garnish, but we're going to put them in at the end, okay? So not to get mixed up with garnish, we need these onions for the flavor, okay? So I'm using the whole onion. Often people are timid with scallions, and they just want to use the white or just a little bit, but there is no way that you get rid of the green. You use every single piece of that till the very tip, okay? The very, very tip. I never ever, and if for some reason you just have that much left, then that goes into your pile for broth, and then this is your scallions. And sometimes I just like giving it a good another chop, so that they're really fine. Okay, so that's definitely going in there, and it says technically that we need 4 scallions, which is about a quarter cup. Okay, and if you wanted me, today I'm kind of showing you how I visually know things sometimes, and you learn how to be visual. Eventually you cook enough, you kind of learn what's on your cutting board is actually the measurement, so that you don't always have to measure every single thing, right? But I think we have almost a quarter cup here, because we said we needed 4 scallions, and that equals almost a quarter cup, okay? So that is not packed in there, but it's right there, and a quarter cup. Okay, now we're gonna look at the soup, And what we're looking for here, the way that you know that it's almost done, first of all, it's on a rolling boil now, which is fantastic. I'm just going to move the lid. And we want the mushrooms cooked, okay? You always, I'm under the, I always think the mushrooms has to be fully cooked. I don't like raw mushrooms. In fact, sometimes they tell you not to eat raw mushrooms, but I do know that they serve them raw, but I think it's better to actually cook them. So these are cooking, these mushrooms. And what else is going in here that we just can use the few minutes while this is cooking? The slurry is going to go in there. We have our wonderful bok choy that we talked about earlier. Now, bok choy has these beautiful leaves, and it's up to you how you cut this, really. I'm going to cut the end off because it has a bottom, right? Just kind of like celery, right? And here's an extra leaf, okay? And usually what I do, remember they just told us in the book, if we had 1 cup, it would be enough for us. 1 cup for the whole day would. And so I'm just cutting this straight down the middle. I did wash it. I'm just looking inside to make sure that there is no dirt inside, okay? I definitely washed it earlier, but you just never know what's inside. So I always do like a checking on it, okay? And then it's up to you how you slice it. I just kind of rough slice it. I don't try to do anything fancy. I definitely use the leaves. I just cut the half into quarters, and then I cut these at an angle, okay? Oftentimes when I'm making something Asian, right, I cut things at a bias, so they look like that, right? And then I'm cutting the greens. There's no way we're not having the greens. In fact, that part is delicious, and I can see the soup is just boiling like crazy, and I'm just gonna finish cutting this. Now, I called for, how many did I say? 2 bunches of small bok choy. If you go to the farmer's market anytime now, you're going to see all that baby bok choy. It's not overgrown. Big bok choy is good, right? It's the size like that. But if you find the baby bok choy, absolutely buy that because it's so tender and so delicious, okay? Now, I don't know that we need 2 full ones. I feel like we need 1.5 because the size of this bok choy, well, I've actually already cut and cooked the two small ones. So we're just going to use it all. And I'm just going to cut the greens. And we're going to end up probably with almost 2 cups of vegetables. Maybe more. It's hard to tell. I could, if someone really, you know, some of you I know like to know exactly the measurements. And I say, you know what, it doesn't really matter. But this is probably 2 cups right here. 1 cup and 2 cups. When I'm trying to do my little visualization of things, you know, I say, okay, that's 2 cups. And is it 2 cups? Let's just see if it's 2 cups. But let's just see what happens here. So this is 2 cups. And we are going to finish off this soup. So here's 1 cup. So this soup is really good at this stage. We're going to take our slurry. Okay, this is our slurry. And we're going to mix it because having it on the counter sitting for like 2 minutes, all the cornstarch just went to the bottom, right? So we're giving it a good mix. And then we're really going to put it in there. We're going to get it all mixed up. And that's really going to thicken our soup, okay? It's not going to make it really thick, but it's going to give it so it has some thickness, okay? And then we're going to put in, we're just basically going to add our everything else. I'm going to add the onions now. And I always leave a few onions for the end. We're going to put in our bok choy. But we are forgetting almost our tofu. So let's get that in too. And that's way off to the side over there. And it's really up to you if you use tofu. But I think you want to have as much protein as possible, and it goes well. So what I did was I had 1 box of firm tofu. You could use extra firm. And I'm using this press. Now, you don't have to have a press, but I give you a link. This would be a good time to show the link to what is called the Tofu Express, okay? Tofu Express, and it basically takes all the water out of your tofu. It's like a little contraption that squeezes things, like almost kind of like a salad spinner in a way, right? And just turning that within minutes, all the water is going to come out, and I'll show you. This is a fairly new thing. I've had it for about 2 years now. Lynn Diamond told me about it, and I thought, do I really need a tofu press? Up until having a tofu press, I would take the tofu and I would put a big cast iron pan. I would wrap it in paper towels. Then I would put a cast iron pan, and then I would put a bunch of cans on top of that, and I would put as much weight on it as possible, and then let the water drain. But I have to tell you, from the moment I've had this tool in my kitchen, and I had it when I was living in Manhattan, and kind of my rule of thumb is if you have a small kitchen, you don't have room for lots of extra tools. But I had this in my Manhattan kitchen, and I really found it very valuable to have. And why did I find it valuable? Because it's very quick. There's no balancing of the cast iron pan with the cans on top. I can't tell you how many times it used to all fall over, and then I had like a mess or something. So this is really good. And look, the water. I don't think you can quite see it here, but I'm going to just show you when I take this off. Of course, it's red. It can come off right away. And this particular tofu thing is, once you drain it, okay, so look at the water. Just watch how much water comes out. Look at that. All that water, probably almost a half a cup of this, of water. And why is it good to get out all the water from the tofu? Because tofu is like a sponge. It absorbs flavor, right? So you want it to get all the water out, so whatever flavor that you're imparting starts to absorb into it. So it's, again, kind of like salad. When you're making salad, and if you don't dry the lettuce, and then you put the lettuce in the bowl when it's wet, and then you put the dressing on, you're watering down everything because you didn't dry your lettuce. So that's true of the tofu, but in a different way. You want to get all the water out so there's no water in it, and then you want to be able to add your flavor. So what I was saying about this particular thing is it comes with a lid, not this lid, but it comes with a lid. So if you wanted to marinate your tofu, you would actually just marinate it right in this container. So it's a pretty cool thing. And then we've got this liquid that all that liquid we've taken out, which is great. So this is boiling like crazy.
Carole?
Yes, Wendy?
I'm going to interrupt since you were talking about water. There was a question about why you don't wash your mushrooms. In other words, why do you never wash mushrooms, and does that have something to do with the water content?
Yes, well, yes, because what happens if you take mushrooms to the sink and you're going to wash them, you're basically, they too are like tofu. They're like a sponge. They absorb, and mushrooms have their own liquid. And so you just want to, you don't want to add more water to them because they're just going to take the water in. So your goal is to take a paper towel and moisten it, and then individually. Now you might think that is crazy to individually, but believe me, think about a restaurant that has trays full, carts full of mushrooms. Nobody is putting all those mushrooms underwater. You are carefully wiping your mushroom down. It's very important. No water.
And one more question, which is, how do you freeze your quart of broth? Do you use plastic bags, glass jars, or containers?
Okay, well, first of all, mine doesn't stay long enough, ever. I make it almost all the time. Why? I'm always having these scraps. When I get so many scraps in the freezer bag, the Quart Ziploc bag, I make stuff. I use it so fast that I never have time to freeze it. But if you're not so fast, because some people only make it once and then they have it and it's good for months, you could put it in big ice cube trays. You know, that is a great way. You could freeze it in a Ziploc bag if you want, honestly. But they make these super cubes And they're big. So instead of tiny little ice cube trays, you know, those square things, they actually make them so they're for soup. So you get those, the super cubers, I think it's called. And I don't have a link for you, but there's a really good brand for that. And you actually get big blocks of broth. And that's how you would freeze it.
Excellent.
So
And
I'm going to cut this. I can still talk, Wendy, but I'm just going to cut this evenly. I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to cut it into threes, okay? And Wendy, watch closely, because I know you ask me this sometimes when we've been together. Carole, will you cut the tofu? And I'm like, Wendy, we've cut the tofu 10 times together. So we can do it. So I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces going that direction. And then what I do is I just stand it up, right? And then I cut the 6 pieces into one long piece. Then I turn it, and then I cut it into cubes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this becomes one cut there. Turn it around. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what do we end up with? A bunch of cubes, right? Pretty perfect cubes. And all of that's just going in the soup, okay? We don't even have to separate it. We don't have to separate it here. It's just automatically going into the soup, okay? Now, let's get this soup and stir it around. It's looking gorgeous. I want to encourage all of you to not just use the bok choy. At this time of year, you could use asparagus. That would be delicious. You could use broccolini. You could use regular broccoli. You could also cut up carrots if you so desire. I also recommend that you could use the baby corn that you buy in a can. That could be a vegetable that goes in here. You could also use cabbage. Green cabbage probably would be better than the red. But this is your soup. So all we want to do now is get that tofu cooked another 5 minutes. And I'm just going to show you what it really looks like here. We're going to serve and plate it in a minute. But before we serve and plate it, we have to taste it, right? Because before you go serving anything, you want to taste things, okay? So, and if for some reason you've added so much vegetables, like if we've added more broccoli or something, and you find that the soup has more vegetables than broth, then just add another cup or 2 of either broth or water. It's going to be just fine, okay? So here I'm going to taste it. You can kind of see that it's not thick, okay? The broth is not thin, but it's not thick. It's kind of looks glazy a little bit, and that's the cornstarch that's kind of giving it that kind of silky, kind of smooth broth. So I'm going to taste. Oh, it is so good. It is so good, and we haven't added any spices yet, okay? I would say it's fairly neutral. I'm going to put a pinch more. Now you have to remember I've added no salt. So I'm going to add just a pinch more chili flakes for flavor, okay, because I want it to have some flavor, a little more flavor. And then it's what we're going to put. And I remember also that we haven't added our rice wine vinegar or our soy sauce. So that's what happens when you don't read the recipe in order. So I have soy, and I'm bringing all this to the front to show you. Let's do first of all, let's read the recipe, because that's classic for me to skip something, because I do things by memory. We did ginger and garlic and chili flakes. We did our broth and our shiitake mushrooms and our bamboo shoots. And then we did our tofu just now. And we have our soy and our red wine vinegar. And we have our bok choy, which we did. We did our cornstarch scallions. And then we're going to have cilantro. So we have 3 things left to add while this tofu is cooking. So how much? We need 2 tablespoons of soy. Now, you might say, I can't eat soy. So I'm using tamari, and tamari that has 28% less sodium, and it's gluten-free, non-GMO. But let's just say you can't have either one of those. You can use Bragg's liquid aminos, coconut aminos. You will get the same exact effect than using the tamari or the soy. So we're putting in 1, and we're putting in 2. Okay, 2 tablespoons for that whole pot. And then you all have seen, if you've come to watch me numerous times, me talk about rice wine vinegar. And why do I have 2 bottles out? Well, you'll see, one has a red lid, one has a green lid. And I used to have a bottle that had an orange lid, but I can't find that anymore. But basically the orange one was the one that was in the middle, and I kind of like that. The middle one. So what I'm going to explain to you, this is a brand called Marukan, Marukan, and this is regular rice wine vinegar. This brand is organic, and what I love about this rice wine vinegar is it's 0 calories. 0 calories, no sodium, no fat, no carbohydrates, no added sugar, nothing. It is simply rice wine vinegar. But there is something called seasoned rice wine vinegar that has a purpose. And what is its purpose and how is it different? Seasoned rice vinegar has salt added and it has sugar added, okay? Not a lot, okay? This has 4 grams of added sugar, okay? And it has how much sodium? It has 10%, 240 milligrams for 1 tablespoon. So this basically is okay to use in certain times. Why? Because if you want something to be a little bit sweet, but you're not necessarily adding a teaspoon of white sugar, or we could add a little date paste if we wanted it to be like sweet and hot at the same time, or we could just, it's up to us which one to use. So we actually have 3 tablespoons here of seasoned. Now what I was saying is there's another jar, a bottle that I haven't found, which is the in between, which is seasoned rice vinegar, but it's lower salt and lower sugar than the one that is full sodium, full sugar. So I like that middle one very much, but I have not been able to find it for months in any store. So I don't know if they stopped making it. I'm not quite sure. So we need 3 tablespoons of this seasoned. So I'm using the one that has a little bit of added sugar, but you now have had your lesson from me on rice wine vinegar. And this is pretty much this. I'm going to just stir it. We have to get our cilantro in, and then we're going on to our next thing. And I'm going to keep this at a simmer. We'll actually serve this up at the very end. Okay? And it tastes fantastic. And of course it needs its cilantro as it's finishing. And it's up to you. I have a big bunch of cilantro here. I'm just going to try to pull some of it out of this jar. Oh, it's so in there, it's packed so tight. And as far as I'm concerned, you can never have enough ginger, right? And don't forget I have these little onions left. I'm just going to put them in the onion thing there. And we're going to keep all of these ingredients for later. I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. And we will serve it up after we serve and I'm just going to cut this up. This has already been washed, the cilantro. I wash it as soon as I come home. Okay, I was talking to a guest of mine today, and I said, you know, when I come home, I actually wash everything, and then I try to just put it away. That way it's totally ready, right? And people ask me if I use the stem, and I use a lot of the stem, but it depends what I'm making. So I use some, but I'm not gonna use it all, right? And this is a huge portion of cilantro. I'm not sure that we need all this amount of cilantro, but I'm gonna leave it. We're gonna just cut it because I think we have to have it in our Thai salad. So we might as well just have it all cut and all prepped and ready. And the cilantro can go in at the end. I like putting a little bit inside the soup and not just on the top. So I'm gonna just take some, whoops, and I just got it all over the counter. There's nothing like making a mess, right? First hand making a mess. And this rest of this cilantro we'll use, I'm just going to put it inside this little, we're going to rinse this little cup here. But we have to dry this cup out. I just realized when we stick this in there, if it's not dry, all the cilantro is just going to stick to the side. So Wendy, we're about finished with the soup, and we're going to start with our Thai crunch salad. But does anyone have any, questions related to just the soup itself? We're going to finish it off, but at the very end.
There are a few questions. You may have just done this, but I'm sorry, I was distracted answering a question in the chat. How many grams of sodium is in that tamari?
In this tamari, let's just look at that. Sodium, we're only supposed to have, just so you know, Wendy, I'm sure you know this, 2,000 grams a day, and we're supposed to have, that equals 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon. So my thing that I tell people who have high blood pressure, that if you have high blood pressure, 2,000 is not your goal. They say 1,500, lower, just a little lower than 2,000 if you already have high blood pressure. So that's less than a teaspoon of salt. And then I tell people, if you're eating salt regularly and you like salt, right? Which I used to be in love with salt. I put salt on every single thing, and I loved it. Brownies, top of bread, top of chocolate. I love salt so much. You remember. And I say to people, if you have to have salt, then put 1 teaspoon in a cup on your table, and that's all you're allowed for the whole day. So don't necessarily cook with it and put a teaspoon into your soup or into your dressing. I always say, if you really think it needs salt, and I recently was at a public thing where I made chili, and someone came up to me and said, this needs salt. And I'm like, yes, because you're used to, your buds, your taste buds are used to high salt. And I said, you know what? If you lowered your salt, you would, in 21 days, as you and I know, you can get rid of that flavor that your buds start to change, right? So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Believe me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But back to the tamari and the question, because I got distracted, because I want everyone to know that you're only supposed to have a teaspoon a day. And just think about it, Wendy. People bring home all that food with salt in it, right? So that's why we try to encourage people. I say, bring home the canned tomatoes without the salt. Bring home the beans without the salt. Bring home the broth without the salt, right? Now, there's some things like the tamari, back to your question, that have the salt, and you can't bring it home without the salt, right? So you have to use it wisely and only a little bit, and that's what we did. So
right.
This particular...
Hang on one second, Carole, that everything has, or most things have sodium in them, so you don't necessarily need to add a teaspoon of salt a day. All the vegetables you have, particularly things like celery and Swiss chard, already have a lot of sodium in them. So it's only if you're either low sodium or need for whatever reason to supplement that you'd have that teaspoon.
So back to the label. If my eyes can read the label, it says serving size 1 tablespoon is 17 grams, 1 tablespoon, and there is 0 fat. There is 710 milligrams of sodium, 710 milligrams, which is 29% salt. And that's actually a lot of salt, and this one is the low salt. So it is salt, but not as much as would normal soy sauce and regular tamari. So I would say it's on the medium in the medium field.
Excellent. And one more question. I'm just going to read it. If all you have is the unseasoned rice wine vinegar, can you estimate how much date paste to add to approximate the sweetness?
Oh, probably like a teaspoon or something. Half a teaspoon, half a teaspoon. You're gonna see we're gonna do this in the Thai salad. This is the thing. Just the littlest amount. You just want the littlest amount to balance that flavor, right? And when we top this, I did not make this spicy, okay? This does not have a jalapeno in it. It doesn't normally have a jalapeno in it. But what makes the soup in the end is what you top it with. And you know, I mentioned that you could top it with a chili paste or a radish greens, which is also spicy. But you're gonna see that today I'm using a little, I don't have any Asian chili paste. It's just something I don't have in my pantry. So I actually top it with some harissa, which is a Middle Eastern spice, and it's a tomatoey spicy sauce, and I just top that on top. Or you could use a little sriracha to top it off with, or you could use a little hot sauce if you have like a Mexican spice, you know, a hot spicy sauce that you like, but that's up to you. So this soup, I'm gonna just, it's simmering now, but it is very, very much done. And the other thing that we're gonna do while we're making the salad is I'm actually not in this pot. I'm actually, remember I said we were doing everything in person today, nothing ahead. So I'm gonna quickly make a little bit of ramen for this soup under the high heat. And what kind of noodles am I going to use? Of course, there's infinite amount of noodles. You could just use whole wheat pasta if you want, spaghetti. But I've come to like this brand called rice ramen. And believe it or not, it doesn't, I've cut off the top. How silly of me. You can't read it. But it's actually millet and brown rice. So it's ramen, and it comes in these little blocks like this. And I usually do one block. It has the blocks are called cakes. So 4 cakes come in a bag, okay? So we're just gonna boil that, and it's gonna be part of our soup. Do you have to have that? You absolutely don't. But it's something that you can add that's very nice. What else can you add? Another kind of noodle that I like is a pad thai noodle. And these are organic black and brown rice noodles. Could you add that? Of course, right? Or you could use a buckwheat noodle or a soba noodle. It's really all up to you. I'm just suggesting and showing you that you've got to get yourself a base, and then you start adding the things that you like. Carrots, corn, broccoli, baby corns. That's all up to you, okay? But I've gotten you a good base, and I've gotten you started, okay? Makes good sense? Any other questions, Wendy? Because we're going to serve that after. We're going to cook our ramen, and we're going to move on to our salad that we're making now as well.
We can definitely move on to salad, and at the end, just say 5 minutes, because there's a question that's not on the topic of today's meal, which I want to stay focused on that, but it's a separate question for you about another meal. Also, Carole Klawonsky, in answering your question, you need to, there's sometimes a thought that coconut aminos can replace the tamari, but if you look at the labeling, the amount of coconut aminos compared to the tamari, I believe it was discovered that the amount of sodium is actually equal. The labels are a little different.
And I think the reason sometimes people use the coconut aminos, well, one, I mean, this particular tamari is gluten-free, but sometimes people have to watch out when they're having soy that it's gluten-free, so they immediately skip over tamari and they go right to the coconut aminos.
Right. That's
so
true.
I'm going to move on, Wendy, because I have to. Otherwise, we won't finish, and we're only doing 2 things. But I've left everything so that we're not cooking and prepping in advance. And I'm slowly going over everything in a slow motion here, showing you how things come together. Okay? So this salad is not my own recipe. This salad is something I recently taught in a Food for Life class, and it was so delicious that I thought, wow, not only did I eat the salad in like 2 days' time, and I didn't feel like sharing it with anyone because it was so delicious, but I thought I have to share it with everybody because it's so good. So it is called a Thai crunch salad, and I'm going to roughly follow the recipe because you're gonna see how it comes together, okay? And I've got my soup just minimally heating. So what I have in this bowl right here, or I'm gonna say that it's 2 handfuls, okay? 2 handfuls. It says a half a bunch of kale shredded. You can use any kale, but I've just gotten my hands on locally baby kale, and it's mixed with curly kale that's tiny, so it doesn't even have a stem. And then it's baby lasanata, the Italian, what they sometimes call Tuscan kale. So there's baby Tuscan kale in my mix with my curly, but it doesn't need any, I washed it, but I don't need to take off any of the stems, okay? And I'm just roughly tearing it. You could chop it roughly with a knife, and you know that kale, because of the nature of it, needs its own massaging. So that's why I never really take a knife to kale, because why chop it when you're actually needing to massage it? And as you're massaging, right, you can see it already has gone down in scale because the massaging has made it soft. Now, what's really great about the lacinato, what we call the Tuscan kale, what's good, I have some big leaves, I just took them out to show you. What's really great about this kind of kale is it doesn't need as much, it's more tender actually than the curly kale, and it doesn't need so much massaging. So I actually have some in my refrigerator, and I just thought I'll just show you what that looks like. And to try kale, most people, I didn't like kale for a really long time, and I only liked spinach. I hung on to spinach as my green of choice. And the only way that I learned to like the kale was to eat the baby kale. And then I started liking it, and then I moved on. And last summer I grew so much kale, I was running around with it constantly trying to give it away because there was so much kale. So if you're one of those people that say, you know what, kale's for other people, not me, I suggest you buy the baby kale, because when it's so small and tender, it's a little different than when it's big and curly and tough, and maybe you don't like it then. So what else does this salad have in it? It calls for a half a head of cabbage. Okay, now I always have red and I have green because I'm someone that makes coleslaw all the time, and also cabbage lasts forever. So if you're a single person like me and you want to just buy, sometimes they sell half cabbages in the store, but I buy the whole cabbage and it lasts months in my refrigerator. And if for some reason that you see that it's starting to get a little dark on one side, just cut it off, and the rest of the cabbage is just fine. Cabbage is amazing because it lasts so long. So it doesn't tell us what color, but I think, we talk about eating the whole rainbow. So I'm going to just cut red cabbage and green cabbage, right? Now, if you're watching me here and we're cutting this cabbage and you're saying, actually, I don't want to cut cabbage, well, then just buy the pre-cut cabbage in a package, right? Already washed, and often it will come with green, it will come with the red, and it will also come with some grated carrots, okay? So then you're in good shape. You're not having to do the work that I'm doing right now. So this cabbage is going in, okay, and I cut it as thin as, I possibly could, and I'm just mixing it up, and I'm seeing how it looks. And then I'm thinking, we might as well get some green cabbage in there, right? And I'm just going to cut this, and I'm just I'm kind of just doing it. It says a half a head of cabbage. I didn't write this recipe up, but I always think, what does that mean, a half a head of cabbage? A cabbage could be as small as this, or it could be bigger than your own head, right? So what does that mean to have a half a cup, So I say you do it by the visualization. Now I'm going to the back here, and we're going to drop our ramen cake right into the boiling water. And we're just going to see that that's going to cook in a very few seconds. Okay? And we don't need all this cabbage. And I'm just going to put this cabbage in here like that. Okay? And what are you looking for? You're just looking for color. you want more green cabbage, add more green cabbage. We might as well finish this red cabbage because I don't want to have to put it away. And the red cabbage is not going into my stock, so we might as well get rid of the little piece of red cabbage so that it's just not floating around in the refrigerator. Now, if you didn't want to put it in, you could save this, put it in an airtight container and eat it on another salad or something. Then it's prepped and ready to go. But don't put little ends away as much as you can in the refrigerator because, of course, they're going to get lost, right? And then you're going to be bummed that it's in the back of the refrigerator and that it's spoiled and you've wasted your money. So just be conscientious of that. So this is what I have thus far, okay? The next thing we need is 1 carrot grated. I'm going to get a fork right now because that cake of ramen has been in the water long enough for me to break it apart, okay? So I'm just getting it so that it's broken apart. That's it. It's getting there. Okay, that's floating around in there. The next thing we need is our 1 carrot. And I have this carrot that looks like this, which is pretty great. And again, my point about it says 1 carrot grated. Well, is it a carrot that's really small or is it a carrot that's bigger? It's, again, a visual thing, and you want to have as much carrot as possible. I cut the tips off, right? And these are the tips that actually go in the end, go into the pile that is going to be broth. Right, and I have my grater, and this grater has lots of sides, and I'm using the holes that are large. And rather than just grate it here, why not just grate it right into the salad, right? That way it's not on the cutting board. And it says we only need 1 carrot. Well, that's really up to us. We might need 2. We need 1.5. And you want to always be really careful with your fingers on a grater. Be careful because the blade, it's sharp, right? And of course, you're going to end up with an end that you can't grate anymore, something that looks kind of weird like this. You either eat that as a little snack, right? That's your little treat to yourself. Or if you have a child or you have a husband down in the hallway who's always sneaking in and saying, hey, what's for dinner? You can say, here's some carrots. Keep yourself full on these carrots. Or sometimes I just save these. I'm going to eat these because I'm starving. But sometimes these little pieces just go right into the broth pile, okay? Now I'm going to look and I see, oh, that's almost no carrot whatsoever. So, because it's a skinny carrot. Sometimes they're big and fat. In the spring, the first carrots are big and fat because they're small and nubby looking. They're not long and skinny. When you're getting them fresh from the farmer's market, they're all nubby. Remember, Wendy, you used to go to the market together and we would get nubby carrots.
I remember very well John Brzezinski's carrots at Union Square Market that still had the dirt on them.
Oh my God! He would bring them in a burlap bag, and he would the first carrots, and they had all the soil in the burlap bag, and you basically had to almost get your own carrots out of the dirt. It was such a great experience.
Dr. Weiss used to recommend eating those carrots as long as they were generated or you're using regenerative soil, or John Brzezinski's soil has not been touched in, I think he said 1976. There's been no added chemicals. So he would say, eat the dirt, it's good for your B12.
I was always amazed that John would bring those to the market and the dirt, and I'd be like, I'm in the city and I'm picking my own carrots. I'd be like so excited, So how do I know how much carrot? That was 2 carrots, and I'm just mixing this around, and I see orange throughout. So far we're dealing with, really colorful, almost the rainbow, but not quite the rainbow. I have to look at the noodles, everyone. So, okay, I think the noodles are almost done. I have to just taste. And Wendy, here we were doing almost nothing, and we only have 5 or 6 minutes left. I'm going to not speed along. Oh, the noodles are not done, but we have to still make the dressing. So I'm not going to go through so much detail here, but when I'm cutting the pepper, I actually square it off, okay? Top comes off, bottom comes off. sides, usually there are 3 sides. Sometimes peppers have 4 sides, but I get rid of all this, and this all becomes garbage, right? The center and the seed. You don't get to see me do that very often. And then you want to, of course, you want to cut these up and dice them, but you could use them as your little snacks. And then what you want to do is you want to make strips, right? 1/4 inch strips. And it's up to you how you want the peppers to look. I think in this salad, it's nice to have some not tiny little diced ones, but and not too long, because you don't want to like be chewing on a big pepper. I kind of take the peppers and make them about 1 inch. Okay, that's about what I do, so that you can see them, so they're not small dice, and that they're big. Okay, they're big, but they're not too big for your mouth, right? You always want to think about how people are eating things, and you don't want dinosaur-sized things in one's mouth, right? Now, this was a really big pepper. I'm cutting it into thirds, and I actually think it's probably enough pepper, and I'm going to leave this on the side, okay? The next thing that's going in this, so we did our carrots. We need our green onions. We need like 2 bunches, so I'm going to just put the onions in here, okay? Those are already cut. And then I'm reading carrots, green onions. Oh, we need our cilantro. It's optional, but we need some. So some cilantro is going in there, right? Ah, a 1/2 cup of shelled edamame beans, right? So these come right out of the freezer. They've been on my counter. I measured a 1/2 cup out, and those are just going right into the salad, actually. Just like that. They thawed out. One piece has a piece of ice on it, I see. They're not so thawed out, but I didn't bother to cook them. If you needed to cook them, you could just put them in boiling water for like a second or 2, okay? And then the edamame. Now it's time, so we have this beautiful salad, right? Everyone can see how that looks. Now we're almost to the end. You can add anything else to this. I took out a little bit of frozen mango. Okay, if you have fresh mango, absolutely use that. But I thought as a treat, wouldn't this frozen mango be really delicious just on the top of the salad? Okay, so we have everything in here we need. We have our lycopene, our red peppers, we have our beans, we have our greens, our kale, we have our cruciferous vegetables, right? This is like an all-inclusive, like fantastic salad. But we need dressing, okay? So the dressing has to come together. But before we do the dressing, the noodles have to come out of the pot, okay? So we're going to take this carefully, and we're going to drain. We're just going to drain these noodles. And I'm literally going to just let them sit, but here these noodles are, and that's just going to go right into our soup. And we are going to leave that right there because we have to make our dressing, and it has to come together in a very few minutes. So what have I done? In this container, my hands are dirty, so I have to rinse them. We have 1/4 cup of peanut butter, natural peanut butter, no sugar, no palm oil, no salt. When you are buying peanut butter, either go to the machine where you can grind it yourself, or find the brand that just says peanuts. That's what you want, peanuts. You're not buying it for the sugar or the palm oil, you're buying it for the peanuts. So I have a 1/4 cup of natural peanut butter. Oh my gosh, and it looks delicious. 1/4 cup. Then we need 1/3 cup of warm water. And why do we need warm water? Well, what I did, and I'm going to get a measuring thing, not a measuring, but a pen. 1/3 cup of warm water is going to go into this peanut butter. And why does it need to be warm? Because we're not ever mixing this dressing in the machine, right? So we want to like dissolve. We want the peanut butter to start to dissolve and kind of break down. And having the hot water is really helping that. Now, this is closer to me. This is a little whisk. And I like it. It's one of my favorite tools in the kitchen. Inexpensive, couple dollars. I've had it for years and years. It's just a little one, right? So now this is all dissolved, okay? That hot water really broke down the peanuts. So we're on our way to our dressing. So we did our warm water. Then it says we need 1/4 cup of sweet red chili sauce. Well, here we go again. I don't have any sweet chili sauce. It's an Asian thing that I don't have. So what are we going to use? We need something tomatoey. We need something a little bit sweet. So I have a little bit of sriracha that I made, and I'm going to take a little bit of sriracha, and it says we need 1/4 of a cup. Well, I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of my sriracha, okay? And because it said it needed to have a little something sweet, I have my date paste, which if you don't know what date paste is, you can just look it up. And I'm just putting in just a teeny bit. So that way we have hot and we have a little bit sour. Okay, so that's now getting mixed up. So we're making a very fast peanut dressing. Now, what is absent? Normally, in this kind of peanut dressing, I would put grated fresh ginger, and I would put sometimes jalapeno. That's if I were, and lots of garlic. But this recipe is so simple. This just has a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder and a 1/2 teaspoon, oh no, sorry, I lied. A 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. Okay, so dried ginger and dried garlic powder. That's going in. And we need to have 4 teaspoons of rice wine vinegar. Well, I'm going to use just the straight up rice wine vinegar because why? I've already added some sweetener, so we don't need any more sweetener, right? And it says that we need 4 teaspoons. Well, 3 teaspoons are in a tablespoon, and I have my tablespoon here. So here's 3 teaspoons, and then we need to get our 1 teaspoon, and then we have 4 teaspoons. Okay? Right? Fast measuring. You have to know your math, is what I always say. So then this is the dressing. This is it. And dressing can last several days. And of course you want to taste it. And what are you tasting it for? You're tasting it, is it spicy enough? Do you need to adjust the flavor at all? Right? And maybe we want it to be spicier because I like spicy things. But I also, see, it's a little sweet, and I think it needs to be a little bit spicier. So I have a little bit here of the harissa, which I'm just going to put in, a big tablespoon I'm going to put in. Okay? And it's just because I want it to be a little spicier. Okay? And this is the fastest peanut sauce I've ever made because I usually make peanut sauce in a machine, and I puree it so that it's nice and smooth. But this is actually quite lovely. Quite fast, no fresh garlic, no fresh ginger. Okay, the flavor is finally there. Just that little bit of adjustment, just put it over the edge. So, what do we have also over here? We have a lime, and it doesn't call for a lime, but I think it's nice to have a lime. It's up to you. You could have that. The other thing that's really great, I don't have mint in my garden, but I have mint from a little tiny package, and a little bit of mint will be nice on the salad. So we're going to get all the salad ready to go, and we're going to get everything plated, and we're going to wrap things up, Wendy. And I know you have one question just at the very end, but let's get this dressing onto this whole salad. So I just use almost all the dressing. I kind of hold back a little bit because I like to save some dressing. First of all, I see if it needs more. I'm going to mix it with my hands, right? And you want it to be, and could you put the noodles that we just made in this? Absolutely. But we're only having one dish with noodles. Now, it's up to you how wet you want it. I don't like dressing drowning on my salad. I like it to coat. And you can always serve a little bit of dressing on the side. So if somebody at the table wants to have theirs a little wetter, of course that's what they could do. And you want to just give it a good taste. You cannot go wrong on this salad. This salad is so good. Thank you for allowing it to be so delicious. So what's going in? The whole salad is going in here. Look how much salad we have. We almost have enough salad for an army. But that's the crazy thing about this salad. Would you believe that that could be 3 meals or 3 or 4 meals? It just depends on how long. And then, of course, I want to put some mango on top to make it pretty. That gives us our full rainbow, right? We have orange, different shades of orange, yellow, greens, purples. We have everything. And then, of course, I want to chop a little bit. Let's give this a rinse. I just took it out of this package. Okay, and then we're going to serve up the soup, Wendy, and we are going to be done. And I know you have a pending question, but give me just 2 seconds to finish. And we'll serve that soup up. And I'm going to put, this is just mint. You don't have to put mint, but isn't that going to give it a nice flavor? And again, we don't use any salt, so we have to come up with creative ways, right? And our salt replacements are with citrus, with our dried herbs, and with our fresh herbs, right? And let's get all of this onto here. And that is and a little bit of cilantro, right? And a little bit of onions, right? Everything just on top so people know what's inside. Okay, so that's that. So that's our beautiful thing. Let's get this off the counter. Let's get this knife put. And we're gonna just get the soup. And then this remaining dressing just ends up, where does it end up? In a container in the refrigerator. And it could probably stay a good week. And you could use it for topping rice. You could make noodles. You could, just anything that you want to put peanut sauce on, right? And it'd be a good dip. So we're going to get our bowl. Where is our bowl? Right here for the soup. Okay. And the soup is important about how you're going to garnish it, right? So we're going to get this soup. And I'm going to ladle a proportion is 12 ounces, actually. This is a cup, and I'm going to just give it another half. So 12 ounces is technically 1 person's portions, okay? And then this comes the finishing part, right? We have our noodles, right? So we can put as many noodles in as we want. We don't need the whole thing. We just could have just a few noodles. We could put a few onions, right? A few onions. Now I have some wonderful radish microgreens. They're sprouts, actually. They're not microgreens, they're sprouts. So I'm going to put a little bit of that just on top. Why? Because they have a kick. Radishes are spicy, right? So that's just going on. And do you have them? No, then skip them. Put another green, add some broccoli. It's up to you, right? And then I like adding a little bit of the harissa. Now again, we're using the harissa instead of the sweet an Asian sauce, but it's tomato, it's hot and spicy, and we're just gonna add a little dollop there, just because that's eventually gonna get mixed in. And then remember I mentioned that normally it has sesame oil in it. So if we're just missing that sesame flavor, let's put either some beige or some black sesame seeds on top, right? And that is our hot and sour soup and our Thai crunch salad. And that's everything, Wendy, everything in a wrap.
Absolutely gorgeous. Carole, I know you risk tipping things over, but can you hold them up to the camera a little bit closer?
Sure. So here is the soup without tipping it over.
Yum.
And then I want to call it rainbow salad, but because it is like a rainbow. But here's our salad.
Wow. Again.
Okay. And you could put cucumbers in this salad, right? I mean, honestly, you can do whatever you want, but you definitely need the the things that it calls for. And the combination of the kale, the cabbage, the slippery mango, you could use cucumbers, as I said. You have your carrots for some sweetness. Mangoes also, there's red peppers. And it just balances really nice with the spicy, not too spicy, peanut sauce. And it's up to you how spicy you make the peanut sauce. If you're a wimp, then just be wimpy about it and don't make it spicy, right? but make it how you want. But these are both two things that are good base things for you to build on top of.
Yes, you're getting all kinds of comments in the chat about it being stunning, which it is. The colors, of course, are so luscious and delicious looking, and the flavors between the spices and the sweetness of the mango, the fresh mango, and all the greens in there, the bitterness, the saltiness, all of it. It just all sounds mouth-watering, Carole.
I'm
I'm
drooling
sure
right
I'm not
now. Like,
alone in wanting
it's
to come for dinner.
it looks so good. It's ready to eat right away. And both things hold. Do you know what I mean? The salad, you
Yeah.
mix all the dressing and you think tomorrow it's not going to be delicious. It's just going to be, it's going to be fine. And then of course, if you want to serve either one of these dishes with a sliced lemon, lime, a squeeze of lime, you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely great. And so much variety. In the chat earlier, there was also a conversation about the recommendation, not just of mushrooms, but of G-bombs, the greens and beans and mushrooms and onions and mushrooms and berries and seeds. Anyway, this dish, except for berries, has all of it. So you could have a good bowl of berries for dessert, and you'll have all of your immune boosting foods using the Dr. Furman acronym, G-bombs. Carole, there are two questions.
Okay, I'm ready, and I'm just putting the dressing away while I'm talking to you.
Yep. What kind of kitchen knife do you use? And the comment was, you use it so elegantly. I know you sharpen your knives quite often.
Well, I have to tell you, these knives have been mine for like 30 or 40 years. When I worked in the restaurant business, when I was in my 20s, I actually invested in these Wustoff. Wustoff is the brand, Wustoff. They're a little pricey. And if you're someone that's just starting out, maybe you don't need to buy a $150 knife. Okay, they do go on sale, especially at Christmas. You always want a knife that is forged and the metal goes through the handle. That's ultimately a good knife. When I worked in a restaurant, had to bring my own knives. So, and if you had a colleague working in the restaurant, you wouldn't ask to borrow their knives. That would be like asking someone to borrow their, their underwear or your paintbrush, or, you don't borrow your colleague's knife because you have your own, right? So these have been my own. I actually have several French knives, an 8 and a 12 and a bigger one, but I use the 8 because I have very small hands. So I find comfort in that knife. And there's a lot of Japanese knives now on the market. I don't have a brand right here in the forefront of my brain, but just, you can go to a cooking store. What I always suggest is you go to Williams-Sonoma, and you go to a high-end store where they have a lot of knives, and hold it in your hand, okay? Feel the weight. You want it to have a weight to it, but you want it to be comfortable. And then if you end up buying it online, then buy it online. But definitely something that you really want to touch and have in your hand before you go buying.
Excellent. I use, just FYI, a Japanese knife. I don't have the name for it. Again, I've had it well over 25 years, and it works really, really, really well. Carole, how often do you sharpen your knives?
Well, I have a steel. I have this steel that, you sharpen your own knife. But I'd say once a year or so, or when I was in New York, it was easy to do. Here, I don't know where to go. But you can have your own sharpener, a steel. There are other kinds of sharpeners. Or you can go to like the Basics, if you're in New York City. Basics sharpens knives. Zaber sharpens knives. And there used to be a great guy from Brooklyn before the pandemic. He would come around in what looked like an ice cream truck. And he would ring the bell, and I would run outside with my knives, and he would sharpen the knives. I would switch off. I'd say, I'm cooking, I'm baking, here's some cookies. It's good that I got rid of that dressing because it didn't spill with my elbow. But anyway, like any tool, Wendy, I just want to emphasize, you and I talk about this all the time, it's worth the investment. Sometimes it's a big investment, but again, because we seem to be talking a lot about Dr. Furman today, what does he say? It's better to invest in a tool in the kitchen, right, than invest in prescription medicine, right? So if you're using it, and I'm paraphrasing because you've told me this a million times
Hospital
around,
bills. Yeah,
right?
better to invest in a blender now than hospital bills later.
Exactly. So I was
It's on my mind
paraphrasing.
a lot because
Yeah. So I
I just
didn't get
got
it
back from
quite
the
right,
ski
but
trip.
you've told it to me many times, and
Yeah.
I think about it many times, you know, and it is worth, and you know what? You do a little bit at a time, right? You don't do it all. I went almost my whole adult life till I owned a Vitamix, okay? I wanted one forever, but I didn't want to pay the money. And, you know, so eventually you get one. But the thing is, it is worth buying certain tools, and knives, when you spend the money on them, do last for I want to say forever.
Great. I know we're at 6:30, so for those who need to sign off, thank you so much for coming. If you all can stay on one more moment, there's a question about an Italian sauce, which I'll get to in one moment. For those who are still here, please join Plant Powered Metro New York on our upcoming events. As mentioned, we have an in-person farm field trip to Dr. Weiss's Ethos Farm, but you do need to register early. And if you're coming from New York, there's an opportunity to join us on the bus from New York City to Long Valley, New Jersey, to the farm. So please join us for the Ethos Farm field trip and learn about the soil, the microbiome, all the reasons why good soil and a healthy microbiome matter to our gut microbiome and our relationship in our digestive system in the soil. And then for those of you who are interested in the Jumpstart, the last day to register for the Jumpstart is May 8th. So all the details are on the Plant Powered Metro New York site, which I believe will be in the chat momentarily. Just checking, yep. And finally, Carole's next demo is going to be May 1st. And
May 1st?
Yep, May 1st, Carole, 5 o'clock, just double checked everything. And I believe she'll also be part of the demo a little bit later in the month. But the next public demo for us is May 1st. And you can reach Carole at her website, which is thevegievanguard.com, or on Instagram at the Veggie Vanguard. She posts during the month some incredibly delicious photos, and also the recipes on her site are delicious. So those of you who need to end, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us. And the last question, Carole, which is switching from Asian flavor into an Italian idea. There was a question for a woman who wants to use chickpeas in a cooking competition to make an Alfredo sauce. Any suggestions on making an Alfredo? I'll read you the question. I have a cooking competition on Tuesday and I need to use chickpeas. Is there a chickpea Alfredo sauce if you've got time to address at the end of this presentation?
Oh,
So,
I don't, you know,
yeah.
I have only made the Alfredo sauce with either cashews, right? There's just, you know, high in fat, because Alfredo sauce is usually rich and heavy with Parmesan and cream. So the vegan alternative is cashews. And then the alternative to that is white beans, right? When you're not using the cashews, you're using the white beans. Have I ever used chickpeas as a, I don't know of a recipe off the top of my head with an Alfredo sauce, but what I would do if this was my challenge is I would just look up a vegan Alfredo sauce. I'm sure Forks Over Knives has one, or T. Colin Campbell, or any of the, just Google vegan, and then substitute the chickpeas, because you're having to use those. But it's going to be a different flavor than a white bean. Because chickpeas have their own. Chickpeas are my favorite. If you're in a chickpea competition, I'm there. I mean, I want to know about it. But those are my ideas just off the top of my head at the last moment here. But I would just research Alfredo vegan and then start to just make some substitutions, because you're going to need nutritional yeast, right? You're going to need some kind of milk, right? A plant-based milk. and you're going to need some kind of thickener as well, because the beans aren't going to do it by itself. So maybe some kind of cornstarch, potato starch, tapioca, something to pull it all together.
And just to add someone in the chat, Virginia, thank you, just made an Alfredo sauce with cauliflower, which I have done, and it's turned out delicious,
yes.
but that doesn't solve your chickpeas need. So I will say, as a plug for Carole, also for Kathy Fisher and a couple of other people, there's a delicious chickpea tuna salad. So it's like a mimicking of a tuna salad, or some people feel like it's an egg salad, but it's using chickpeas instead of tuna or instead of egg or something.
And Wendy, that's my last thought today, and then we must go because everybody's, but happy Passover and happy Easter. And when you said chickpeas, my head leaped to my own website because gefilte fish is made with chickpeas. So, chickpeas like makes my head explode almost. And I get so excited thinking about the chickpeas. I often want to be an alias, and I'm going to be a chickpea caper. So super cool with that woman in a chickpea contest. I want to know what that is. But we should end because I promised we'd be fast today, and here we are at 6:32.
It's true. We took our
so
time.
We should really wrap it up. And just tell everyone, thank you so much for coming. Happy spring. Happy Chag Sameach to those who celebrate Passover. Happy Easter and happy April. It's a weird springy weather we are all having across the country. And next time we see you in May, it will be, we hope to be in full spring.
It's true. So thank you for coming, everyone. Again, please come to all of our events at Plant Powered Metro New York. Come to the website. You'll see a list of upcoming events. We have ongoing free classes during the week, so you don't need to wait till May to sign up for either the tour or the Jumpstart. There's a potluck coming up, and there's educational classes coming up. There's a nutritional support group. So go to our website, go to upcoming events. If you're inclined, please make a donation, however large or small, because we do give free classes and free opportunities to go whole food plant-based, and anything you want to give, including just your attention, really does help our work in all the communities that we serve all over the boroughs of Manhattan. So thank you again. Happy holidays. Bye.